Yes. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks to the organizers for this great conference. Not bad practice, but I have two apologies right off the bat. First apology is a really rough idea, so I would really appreciate it if you some kind of direction when to take this paper forwards. The second apology, unfortunately, tomorrow I will not be attending the conference. My best friend is getting married, so I will be there. Sorry. I'll make sure to catch most of your talks when they're uploaded. It's live. So what I want to do today is to talk about a specific sort of subset of conspiracy theories and conspiracies, which I think are somewhat interesting, philosophically speaking. So conspiracies happen all the time, but there's a special kind of conspiracy, and that's what I would call second-order conspiracy. It's a conspiracy to create a conspiracy theory, right? Some people conspire in order to bring about, to create and perhaps disseminate conspiracy theory. So here are two definitions. A conspiracy C is a second-order conspiracy, if only if C is the reason why conspiracy theory exists. And by reason here, I mean something like I'm black boxing any specific sort of causal period of causation, like that. There's some kind of causal account. But like, given conspiracy theory is brought about by the conscious acts of an agent. And a second-order conspiracy theory is something like this. A conspiracy theory T is a second-order conspiracy if only if theory, only if T purports to explain the existence of the conspiracy theory T star by appealing to a second-order conspiracy. Okay. So we explain why a given conspiracy theory exists by appealing to a conspiracy which brought about that conspiracy. So in this sort of paper, I want to do two things. I want to sort of introduce the term in sort of broad strokes by examples, and I want to sort of highlight certain philosophically interesting consequences of that term, that concept. I think it's useful to speak to do sort of conspiracy theory by appealing to second-order conspiracies. And part of my background assumptions is something like a minimal non-pejorative definition of conspiracy theory. Conspiracy theory is just a kind of a theory which purports to explain a conspiracy, something by a conspiracy. And the conspiracy itself is nothing but some kind of coordinated action, perhaps in secret, in order to bring about something. So really minimal stuff. And also, I think that something like particularism is true. I will assume it. I will, at least, what I would say is that I will try to accommodate as many particularist insights as possible. This will become apparent later on. Okay, so here are some examples of second-order conspiracy, just to give you an idea of what these conspiracies are about. So some actual cases. So the protocols of the Universe of Zion, I think is a plausible. Is the theory which cites the protocols of the Universe of Zion. This is a plausible. This is a plausible case where this is the result of a conspiracy. People actually conspired in order to create that conspiracy. It wasn't just a spontaneous occurrence in population. There were sort of anti-Semitic groups which, through conscious, intentional acts, they deliberately fabricated a text supposedly showing that there's a Jewish elite wanting to rule the world and all that. And we don't really know exactly who did it. We more or less know which groups were associated with the fabrication of this text. You know, so groups like the Black Hundreds. Some people say it was the Tsar's secret police. It's not entirely clear that's the case. But anyway, the idea here is that someone deliberately fabricated this conspiracy. Another case is the sort of specific HIV/AIDS conspiracy theory, specifically the one involving the claim that the virus was created in a US lab. Again, that wasn't a spontaneous occurrence. It was a KGB kind of active measures attempt. It was, some people call it the Project Denver or infection. It was an attempt in the context of the Cold War to lay blame on the US. So they fabricated a conspiracy theory claiming that, look, the HIV virus was created in a US lab. Climate change. conspiracy theories, at least some of them. These are, it's my opinion, and it's not a very good name, but I think it's very plausible that they were manufactured by the fossil fuel industry. Right? And we have a very clear genealogy of those theories. It goes back to the 70s. Companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, the Iranian government also was involved. These weren't like genuine concerns people sort of had, but they were sort of fine-tuned and manufactured for a very specific purpose in order to don't take measures in order to combat climate change. So they were the detrimental to the market. And finally, one of my most controversial example are COVID-19 anti-vax conspiracy theories. Again, these are people don't seem to realize that there's a widespread anti-vaccine network which existed for many, many years before COVID. And when COVID sort of occurred, the anti-vaccine industry sort of jumped on the opportunity to create even new, basically to rehash the existing anti-vaccine theories in order to take advantage of the pandemic. And there are very, very specific people involved in this kind of conspiracies. Companies like Civil Self-Defense, which is RFK Jr.'s company. In Europe, there was an organization called, there is actually still, an organization called the World Freedom Alliance. In Greece in particular, when the pandemic began, they opened their headquarters a few months during the first lockdown. So you can see a kind of coordinated attempt to fabricate and disseminate these kind of conspiracy theories. So these I take to be the actual, somewhat uncontroversial cases. And there are also cases which are not conclusively demonstrated to be true, but they're plausible cases. QAnon might be the result of a second-order conspiracy, in the sense that some people say that Steve Bannon, who wanted to gamify conspiracy theories, so kind of created a narrative through secret channels, a narrative sort of unified and voting class. This is not, it's not controversial, but it's a plausible case where second-order conspiracy might have been the case. Also, I think many recent UFO or UAP sort of conspiracy theories, they are also the result of a second-order conspiracy. I'm talking about the Pentagon sort of leaked videos, videos supposedly showing, high-tech aircraft and all that. I think there's some evidence to suggest that, these are clearly balloons, right? But there's some evidence to suggest that the people who leaked those videos, they know themselves that these are balloons. But they want us to believe that they are super high-tech craft because they want to take a slice out of the military budget. They want to convince us that we're under attack, so we need to spend money to make us know. And then there are the not so plausible cases. So people familiar with 9/11 conspiracy theories with literature, in a sense, so they know that the nanothermite people are sort of in opposition with the Judy Woods style kind of people. Judy Woods famously claimed that there's the collapse of the Twin Towers occurred because of the use of some kind of energy weapon, which operates on cold fusion. There's also another conspiracy theory about people hiding these sort of solution to cold fusion as well. And people who are into the nanothermite theory believe that the Judy Woods theory is a kind of smokescreen. It's a result of a second-order conspiracy. They want us to associate the 9/11 truther movement with this kind of ridiculous theory, even though the nanothermite theory is the correct one. I'm not saying this is true, but I'm saying that it's also a kind of tactic, the appeal to conspiracies. It's a kind of tactic that's already involved in the kind of conspiracy theory discourse. And more recently, a slightly more local example. Greece, there was a recent spyware scandal in Greece where sort of many well-known politicians were bugged, their phones were bugged, and there's really good evidence to suggest that basically what happens is that the Greek government used Israeli spyware to surveil, to spy on them, but the Greek government itself, through back channels, they want to suggest that it was actually the Russians, right? So they, through well-known Twitter accounts, they've been sort of trying to convince us that, look, it's not us. It's a sort of a Russian conspiracy to create some kind of chaos in Greek politics. So yeah, I'm not saying this is a plausible case, but it's a kind of, again, a clear-cut tactic where you appeal to second-order conspiracy in order to make a point. Okay, so I think the concept is, I think, somewhat clear. Now I want to highlight some kind of evidential sort of insights that we can deliver based on these second-order conspiracies. So I think the idea behind second-order conspiracies accommodates many particularist insights, specifically about the complexity of the domain of conspiracy theories. Not only are there conspiracy theories at the first level, but there are conspiracy theories about those conspiracy theories. So there's like more nuance into the landscape of conspiracy theories. And this is something that sort of plays into the particularist playbook, because they want to suggest that, look, it's very complicated. You have to investigate everything, right? And this is an extra reason why it's complicated, because there are conspiracy theories about conspiracy theories. Also, I think, and I argued this in a recent paper I published, second-order conspiracies, I think they can be evidentially sort of valuable. You can undermine a given conspiracy theory if you appeal to the genealogy of that theory. And if that genealogy brings, if that theory can be traced back to a second-order conspiracy, then that's a reason to be very suspicious of that conspiracy, right? So it's a kind of evidential, like, count here at play. The kind of guideline, if you will, connecting to what intended to begin. For example, COVID-19 vaccine conspiracy theories, I claim, were systematically produced and disseminated by the anti-vax industry. And because of that, it is legitimate to be extremely suspicious of, right? Based on the fact that they can be traced back to a kind of second-order conspiracy. And finally, I just want to say that this is just further evidence that there's nothing wrong with conspiracy theorizing, right? In fact, in order to debunk certain conspiracy theories, you need to appeal a conspiracy theory about those conspiracies, those conspiracy theories. So in a sense, it's inescapable that we need to do conspiracy theorizing, because in order to debunk certain theories, we need to sort of appeal to the conspiracy about the creation. Okay, so that's the general idea. Now I want to make some specific remarks, slightly more controversial remarks about some implications to particularism. Now there's definitely something true about particularism, right? And I'm assuming that something in the vicinity of particularism is true, namely the thesis that there's nothing inherently epistemically problematic with the entire class of conspiracy theories. So that's true, right? But it seems that sometimes this kind of thesis seems to entail kind of a more specific evaluative thesis. Specifically that conspiracy theories should be examined on a case-by-case basis. So because there is nothing inherently problematic with conspiracy theories, what we should do is examine them on a case-by-case, so in a very particular setting, right, on a case-by-case basis. And I think this is the key move here. If you accept that there are second-order conspiracies, and there's some of them, right, some plausible cases, and if these second-order conspiracies are sort of robust enough, you can enforce some kind of patterns, some kind of clustering on the landscape of conspiracy theories. So here's an analogy. In the meta-ethics literature, there's also a generalist particularist debate. There are people who claim that there's a generalist, they claim that there's a true moral principle, like the categorical imperative, and the moral landscape can be captured in terms of that sort of general principle. And there are also the particularists, they claim that there's radical holism, so there are no generalists, only specific, moral truths. But there are people in the middle, right? The people who claim that, look, there are no general moral principles, but there are like a snappy, fairly robust kind of ceteris paribus principles. And what I want to suggest is that something analogous can be delivered in the conspiracy theory literature by appeal to second-order conspiracies. So, here's an example. So take the second-order conspiracy behind COVID-19 anti-vax conspiracy, right? So a specific conspiracy theory about COVID-19 was that, mainstream science hides the fact about mRNA vaccines being cytotoxic, right? A very specific claim. This was a conspiracy theory, I claim, produced, with intent, very fine-tuned by the anti-vax industry. Okay. But crucially, the same industry is responsible for other kinds of conspiracy theories, not only the ones about mRNA vaccines being cytotoxic, but for other theories as well. For example, theories that say that mainstream science hides the fact that mRNA vaccines are shedding. Means that if I'm vaccinated and I go near a person who's not vaccinated, I can infect them with whatever is wrong with the vaccine. So you can see this is a kind of way of creating a kind of robust pattern on the landscape of conspiracy theories. You have a given center, a given source, producing multiple types of conspiracy theories. So a single kind of source is responsible for the creation and dissemination of an array of conspiracy theories. And I think this, at least, it's a kind of promissory note, but it can deliver what I call local generalism. So I know generalism is kind of a bad word in this conference. You can call it whatever you want, but it's something like this. Even though there's nothing inherently problematic with the class of conspiracy theories in general, there is something inherently problematic with certain proper subsets of that landscape. And one example could be COVID-19 conspiracy theories. Why? Because they were produced by a second-order conspiracy, which we know is not geared toward the truth, produces falsehoods. So local generalism, I think, is compatible with particularism in the first instance, but it's not clear that it's compatible with particularism in the second instance. Because if local generalism is true, then we shouldn't examine every conspiracy theory on a case-by-case basis. When there were conspiracy theories during the pandemic, people said, don't take the vaccine. These are just like genetic forms of gene therapy, and so on and so forth. You don't actually have to look at the details of that theory. All you need to realize is that it came from a place which is not sort of geared towards the truth. It came from a sort of a whole industry of anti-vax disinformation. And on that datum alone, you can sort of dismiss that theory. That's this somewhat controversial claim. So I have an objection here, which is actually by a reviewer, which I thank them by the way. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, of course. and I was. This is not like dissing on the reviewer. It's actually a really good point. And give me the opportunity to elaborate. So here's an objection. So the anti-vax industry, they would say, is responsible not for the creation of COVID-19 conspiracy theories, but for the sort of pervasiveness, for the fact that people sort of believe, for the dissemination, if you will. These conspiracy theories, anti-vaccination sentiments are as old as vaccines, right? That's true. There's a general narrative, right? And what the anti-vax industry is doing is that they're simply sort of tapping into that narrative. They don't really create anything out of thin air. They just like appeal to a general narrative, just to disseminate and sort of accomplish their agenda. So, in this sense, anti-vaccine conspiracy theories are simply the result of contingent and kind of spontaneous historical activity. They're not the result of systematic lobbying. Okay? But then, if that's the case, then local generalism, at least in the case of COVID-19 conspiracy theories, seems unwarranted. Some anti-vaccine conspiracy theories will turn out to be true, some will turn out to be false. So we're back at square one. But here's some like hand-wavy responses. So, a general point, if local generalism is true, it will be true relative to a specific class conspiracy theories. And that's an empirical issue, right? I think there are some plausible cases where, perhaps the climate change conspiracy theories is a good case where just so much evidence. These are theories aggregated by the fossil fuel law. But anyway, the idea here is that this is kind of subject to empirical investigation, and I'm optimistic that there will be some kind of clustering in the landscape of conspiracy theories. If not, fine. But I think that it's at least this is an avenue that it's worth exploring. Second point, we should not underestimate how local the kind of generalism I'm proposing really is. It's really local, right? It's not like anti-vaccine conspiracy theories in general, but sort of COVID-19 is the vaccine conspiracy theories. Instances of the COVID-19 conspiracy. So in other words, people did not conspire to create the anti-vaccine narrative. That's true. It was already there. But people did conspire in order to fabricate specific iterations of that narrative. For example, the gene therapy kind of idea, that mRNA vaccines are forms of gene therapy. This was not part of the general narrative. People actually sat down and said, we're going to do this. We're going to spin the kind of anti-vaccine conspiracy theory in this way. And we actually know this because there are leaks by kind of internal communications by anti-vaxxers. It is freakishly fine-tuned and sophisticated. The ex-psychologist of Cambridge Analytica is actually working for some of these companies. And based on these leaks, so-called hard leaks, we can see the kind of discussion they're having. It's like a PR marketing group saying, look, we're going to spend this way and that way, because that way we're going to appeal to these kind of people, and so on and so forth. So it's just to show that there's a complicated mechanism here producing this information in a fairly counterfactually robust way. So the main point here is that even though the narrative itself is not fabricated, specific instances of those conspiracy theories are fabricated. So I think this sort of salvages my point in some way. That was it.